Hello everyone, welcome back. It is the Enforcer, and this is the third stream of the War of Ukraine on my channel, with the current info coming out as soon as possible and in the middle of the stream. I'll be trying to answer as many comments as possible today, and without further ado, let's get to what has happened so far and what happened overnight from the last stream. So, to cover what we have, we currently know that the Russians have, in the first days of the war, launched missile attacks on the main cities and military installations of Ukraine. They then launched a military invasion from the northeast, well, not the north and east, I'm sorry, north, west, and south, from Crimea, Donetsk, and Luhansk, the areas around Kharkiv and Sumy, and the Belarusian border close to Kyiv. They've tried to move as fast as possible, but it appears that they did not reach their first day objectives due to the stiff resistance that they met at the Hostomel airport, which is somewhere in this area right here, and also the just staunch resistance in general of the Ukrainians in every front, including in places like Snake Island, which does not even matter strategically, yet the Ukrainians held it for an entire day. The state of the war changed from last night, last I got off. There actually was a bit of fog of war going on in terms of what I was saying last night, because the information was not coming out as accurately. So this was the situation last night that I depicted to everyone, and this is the actual situation that last night looked like. You can see that not much actually changed. The most important part of this map that's changed is that the Russians have not actually broken past Chernihiv in any meaningful way, and so this entire area, which is most likely within their battle plan, has not been taken at the moment. However, right when my stream ended, significant ground was made near the city of Ivankiv, and so the secondary objective that I said they would have to pursue if their airport invasion at Hostomel did not succeed, in which it didn't, I said yesterday that the Russians would have to begin a ground invasion and push through this area to Kyiv to try and secure it. Surprisingly enough, I was entirely right in this assumption, as this entire area has fallen under Russian control, so we will delete this spot from the map, as it's no longer a secondary objective. It has now become their primary objective, and we're going to change the front lines to look accordingly. Let me make sure I get this just right. I believe that they're trying to control this major highway here, but they do not actually have control of the city of Ivankiv. That's one thing they do not control right here. So we're going to make sure to put that about right there. And so the Russians have made considerable ground in that area, and there's even reports of fighting going on in the suburbs of Kyiv, up here in the northern districts of the city. So really quickly, I'll also edit this, because this has now been taken by the Russians for the most part. And we shall now edit this part of the battlefield as well. Remember, the red is the current front lines, and the green is what I'm supposing the Russians are aiming for at the moment. It appears that overnight the Russians did take Hostomel. I'm not really sure if they retook it, or if they had controlled it from the first place throughout the entire day and there was a bit of misreporting, but nonetheless, they do control Hostomel at the moment. I'm not sure if the Ukrainians are trying to launch another counteroffensive to retake the airport, but at the moment, that's the current situation. There are reports of gunfire in the city of Kyiv as the Russian army faces down the Ukrainian militias and the Ukrainian regular army. The situation of the firefights is currently unknown. The strength of the Ukrainians is also unknown, and the strength of the Russians is generally assumed to be somewhere in the dozens in terms of battalion-sized units. Most of them are still, however, 50 kilometers away from the capital, and they are rapidly approaching. So the question of whether Kyiv will stand much longer is something that I cannot really say with certainty, because while the Russians are going to bear down a lot of force, and I believe they're going to use most of that force to encircle the city's western side, I'm not really sure how the Ukrainians will react to that, and if their resistance will be incredibly strong. So far, the suggestion is that morale is incredibly high for the Ukrainians and incredibly low for the Russians, as many Ukrainians have done things that one could only do if they really believed in their cause. For example, a man today, serving as an infantryman in the Ukrainian army, was rigging a bridge to explode so that way the Russians could not use it to cross. And in the process of doing this, he realized that he would not have enough time to escape from the bridge and complete the work and be able to stop the Russians from crossing the bridge. So he decided to rig the bridge to explode and blew himself up along with the bridge to stop the Russians in time and give the capital just some extra hours before the Russians could bear their full force on it. Another thing that happened yesterday, once again, I do have to say this because they have been awarded the highest honor in Ukraine, the Hero of Ukraine award. The defenders at Snake Island, the 13 men, stood down the Russian Navy for the entirety of the day, outmanned, outgunned, and every other facet that could be in their disadvantage. They faced down the Russians, and all 13 of them died, and all 13 of them have been remembered as heroes and martyrs by the Ukrainian country. So moving on from that, let's talk about extra battlefield developments in this northeastern area that I did not cover yesterday. I actually found out that the city of Sumy is half in control of the Ukrainians and half in control of the Russians, but not in the way I originally showed on this map. I'm going to delete this proposed Russian front because apparently things have changed just enough for that to not be true, and I'll have to draw up what I think is happening at the moment right now. But the actual Russian front, instead of bisecting the city east to west, it more bisects it north to south at the moment. So along this road right here, and the Ukrainians control everything to the south of this line. It also appears that the Russians have been moving a decent amount of forces northwards from this area that I'm talking about here. And let me make sure I mark up the right towns when I'm doing this. Let's see here. There's a very important town that I have to note. I don't want to mark anything inaccurately, so we're going to save on that for now. We'll just go up to Belopolya, because there's an area of Ukrainian forces that have been encircled, and I believe they may be at this town, but I know that I don't think they went as far north as that, up there at Krolovets, which is what I was assuming when I was about to draw that line, is where they had been. I'm not sure if they're there, but I do know that they are fighting around Sumy, and they control a large amount of the land north of Sumy as well. Kharkiv's situation has remained unchanged over the course of the past few hours, as the city still is basing, they're still trying to base a defense against this Russian onslaught. It appears that a lot of losses have been taken by the Ukrainians and the Russians at Kharkiv, as it looks like the fighting for the city has become very intense. Some developments in the south since yesterday is that the Russians appear, according to CNN, and I don't really know how true CNN is, but it appears that they've made a little bit of progress pushing into Kherson. They were pushed off the Kherson bridge yesterday, and then overnight it appears that the Ukrainians' counteroffensive failed, and now the Russians have pushed back across into Kherson. So we will save that for a moment. And that's what is the current development on that front line down there. A very small gain of land, but they do control the entirety of the port city of Kherson, and I've heard some people pronounce it as Kherson. I'm not really sure which one's which, but I'll be calling it Kherson. Also, the Russians have progressed in achieving what I believe was their original objectives on the first day, and that is that they've reached the city of Melitopol, which was something I said they would probably try and gain as one of the larger cities in the southern area of Ukraine that's within a short distance of the border, a quick objective to start putting pressure on the Ukrainians, since they'll be fighting in many major cities in Ukraine. And so that's the current developments down here near Ukraine. I mean, down here near Crimea. But one of the most important developments that has caused some concern for me is that to the west of this town called Mariupol, there has been a naval invasion by the Russians. The forces are estimated to be in the few thousands, but it appears that they have made a small beachhead, and there's not much more information beyond that, rather than there's been a confirmed Russian naval invasion around Mariupol. So we'll put this as a Russian beachhead. And because it's a Russian beachhead, it seems to me that the only proper color would be some kind of teal color. So we'll put that there. As I get more information on that during the stream or later on, I'll try and update and add information to this. But what this appears to be is a runaround, a subversion, you could say, of the static positions that the Ukrainians have along the Donetsk and Luhansk front, which almost no ground has been made on during the course of the 2 days of the war. This looks like something I could relate similar to the Germans going through the Ardennes, because they were trying to get behind these static defenses that the Ukrainians have set up. And so hopefully the Ukrainians can start to get a decent bit of control of southern Ukraine, because it appears that this area is going to be an area that has a lot of movement, along with Kyiv as well. So real quick before I continue on, I'll try and answer some questions from the chat. Let's see. Second day objectives. No, they didn't get their second day objectives, luckily enough. Damn, they are pushing hard. I'd have to agree. It seems like they're pushing pretty hard. Thank you for the support for Ukraine. If you'd also like to support Ukraine a little bit further, there's a link in the description below to the Ukraine Ministry of Defense website where you can try and donate to them, and I'm sure they'd be appreciative of any monetary assistance they could get from anyone, even if it's $5 or $10. Martinus says, taking down a city in today's era is kind of impossible, especially this size of city. At least that's what I think. It is nearly, but you do have to remember that it was done in other places like Grozny in the Chechen Republic during the Chechen Wars. That happened. And I'm not really going to draw on examples from World War II much, rather than in terms of overall strategy, because fighting has changed so much in between 1940 and 2020 that it would just be a very ill-made comparison to compare urban fighting then to urban fighting now. So I won't make that comparison. Some other interesting things that have happened is that the men have been barred from leaving Ukraine between the ages of 18 and 60. Most Ukrainian politicians have taken up arms as well. I do know that the youngest of the Ukrainian members of parliament has picked up a rifle, and he is patrolling the streets of Kyiv. I don't know if he's been actively involved in the firefights in the northern suburbs of Kyiv, but he is around there with a weapon. The former heavyweight champion of the world, who's a Ukrainian and now the mayor of Kyiv, he has also been seen taking pictures with a PKP machine gun, saying that he's ready to do his part and fight for the city of Kyiv and Ukraine itself. And so we see a lot of involvement from most of the politicians of Ukraine, but most importantly, it appears that President Zelenskyy has exited his secure facility, whether that be a bunker or some other kind of installation, and he has taken on a helmet and body armor, and he is currently somewhere on the front lines, somewhere in Ukraine. I'm not sure if it's Kyiv. Maybe he's left Kyiv and he's gone somewhere else like Kharkiv, but I do know that he is out there and dealing with the troops directly to them. So far, there's been some reports of more human rights violations and violations of the rules of war during this entire conflict with the Russians, as there's been a video that surfaced of a Russian armored personnel carrier running over a car filled with people. Luckily enough, the one man who was in the car has survived somehow, very miraculously, although a tank ran over his car, and he was seen being pulled out of the car by a group of spectators, I guess you could say. So currently at the moment, the situation is looking like it's getting a little bit more intense for the Ukrainians, although they are claiming that they're inflicting heavy losses on the Russians. So going off of this, I'm going to say that generally the same proposed Russian front lines to proposed Russian objectives are still the same, but there's this area up here that I don't really know much about, and so I'm going to outline a basic front line, and we're going to say it's to Krolevets because it's on a major roadway, and so that's a very easy thing to support army on logistically. So we're going to make a simple front line that includes those major roadways, and we're going to call that a hypothetical Russian front line. We'll mark that red, and we will get that all fixed up nice and pretty, so that way we know that it's the Russian front line. So we get that nice and decent looking. And so, if this is true, and I believe, I'm not sure, someone can back me up on this or shoot me down, either way, I believe there is a group of Ukrainians that have been encircled in Krolevets, but I don't know about that for certain, so I'm not going to make any definitive statements on that. But what I believe the Russians may be trying to do over here, if I'm correct that they are near Krolevets, is that they're going to try and use this major roadway, the M02, to also try and push Kyiv's western side a little bit harder. So I guess you could say that they'll just meet up with they were supposed to meet up with the Russian forces that are still fighting in Chernihiv near Kozolets, and then push down to Kyiv themselves. So I'll mark that up on the map real quick. This will be marked in green because it's a proposed Russian front. And also they would probably try and go for the town of Konotov, because that seems like something that is of value. It's a larger city, and they're trying to control population centers at the moment. So we'll be writing down proposed Russian front. Save. Paint. We'll paint this one up to the dark green. The rest of them are. Make it somewhat transparent. Nice thick border, so that way everyone can tell that that is where the Russians would be going. I just noticed it looks like something else. Didn't think about that, but we'll keep with it. So this is now what I believe the fronts are going to look like today. Now, if we want to talk about this naval invasion of Mariupol, we can, but that'd be very hypothetical because I have no information to base any assumptions off of down there. I can only say what I think would happen. So let me answer some questions real quick. Just joined. What did I miss? Oh yeah, do you have casualty numbers? I do, but they're kind of outdated at this point. The Ukrainians claimed yesterday, after the first day of fighting, that they had taken 137 casualties and inflicted somewhere in the ballpark of 300 Russian casualties. But today they're now claiming that they've inflicted around 1,000 to 2,000 Russian casualties, but those numbers have not been confirmed or corroborated. So I'm not really sure how many Russian personnel and Ukrainian personnel have been killed, and I'm not sure at all how many Ukrainian pieces of equipment have destroyed, such as tanks and so on. But we do have a solid number on the number of Russian vehicles. I believe there's about 90 tanks destroyed, 300 armored personnel carriers. I believe there's still around 7 planes and 6 helicopters destroyed. Let's see. And then Martin has said, is there any action on Moldovan front? Isn't Dnipro pro-Russian? There's a little bit of a difficult nuance with what happens in Moldova. There's this unofficial country on the border of Ukraine called Transnistria, which has Russian troops in it. But as far as I've been told, there's been no actual action from the Russians that are in Transnistria at the moment. So let's talk about what I think may happen at Mariupol. And all this is going to be drawn up in blue. Because it's a secondary objective and it's kind of a hypothetical one at that as well. So I don't really know if this is what will happen. But I believe that the Russians are going to expand out from the beachhead. Obviously, you don't really make a beachhead unless you're planning on, spreading out from it. And I believe that, I believe that if the Russians were to expand out from this, they're going to fight in the city of Mariupol for some reason, because they've been fighting in the cities a decent bit, so they're going to expand directly west into that, and then they're going to go and try and go as fast as possible up the defensive line near Donetsk and Luhansk. And what this will do, and I'll just draw up this around the major roadways, so that way it makes logistical sense. Because when you're fighting a war, it's not really about like trophies or anything. For the most part, it's really about trying to find the best logistical way to fight, and I'll explain why that's really important, kind of like right now, I guess. Logistics is incredibly important to any army that's trying to conduct any sort of operations, because you have to ensure that you can get a large amount of supply to the troops as fast as you need. And while modern militaries do have aircraft to rely on, you can't rely on aircraft entirely, because if you don't have a lot of runways, that's limiting the amount of supply traffic that can reach troops. And so what they're going to start relying on a lot is trucks. And in the process of relying on trucks, you need to make sure that you control roadways large enough to have a large amount of trucks on them. Let's put this down as a hypothetical exploit by the Russians. We will save this. We'll mark it up as blue and give it a little bit of a thicker line width. We'll make it dark blue so that way it's a little bit different than their proposed beachhead down there where they might be right now. But here's what this will do. The Ukrainians are going to realize that this little area right here in between Mariupol and the Russians pushing upwards is completely undefended, and this would be a disadvantageous position for them to control. So the Ukrainians would start an organized withdrawal from that part of the defensive line. This means that the Ukrainians, which will mark their front in yellow, are going to try and set up a front somewhere around here in this one spot. So this will be the defensive line. The new defensive line, actually, for the Ukrainians if this beachhead was to be exploited heavily. And so we'll mark this one in yellow as our old dark yellow, so that way we can see it much better. Maybe even orange. So that way you can see that much better. But that's what the new defensive line will look like. So the Russians will be taking a decent amount of Ukrainian territory by this beachhead move. Another thing that they'd have to do is that the Russians could start kind of like coordinating their fronts, since they have one over here near Crimea, and now they have this new beachhead. And these two fronts will start to squeeze the coastline and start pushing the coast from both sides. And so the Ukrainians will see that, and they'll have to try and react to that, because that's a very bad position, being pushed from two sides at the same time. And they will try and fall back to these positions closer to Tokmak, probably. So you would see something along the lines of this, going from one side of the seaboard to the other, and this would be the new defensive line as well. And I'm not saying that all this is completely accurate. I'm not saying that I know exactly what's going on, but based off of what happened yesterday, which turned out to be right with how they were moving, I believe that this will be generally right. And so this beachhead, although they would be expanding with a smaller force, the smaller force poses a great threat to the Ukrainians in the area, and so they have to withdraw and try and create a new defensive line that's a little bit better positioned to defend. So they've lost this heavily defended area, and so that means the Russians that are caught up in the minefields trying to clear them and get out of here, they can now do it much quicker because they're not taking enemy fire here, and they can start shifting those forces around and free them up into this area, and then they can start pushing this area towards Zaporizhzhia. Wow, that's the name. They will start pushing that a lot harder, because that'll be a lot easier than trying to push through all the minefields over here. So, before I move on, let me answer some questions if there are some. Okay, we don't have many questions right now. Let's see, what else do we have? They're currently accepting refugees in Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. I don't know if Moldova is taking refugees. I've never heard any official information about that. But all these countries are practically accepting refugees at the moment, as long as they have something like a some kind of identification or a passport. They're not required to have visas anymore. So the acceptance of refugees looks like it'd be pretty easy. You could pretty much go in there as long as you're anybody from Ukraine, as long as you're not a man between 18 and 60. There's also been an interesting development. There has been a captured battle plan that I've seen of a Russian commander where he was supposed to go for Kremenchuk. So let me draw up exactly where he was going, and this is going to back up that I believe that they are using major roadways in a lot of their strategies, because there was a map from Poltava to Kremenchuk, and they took this route right here. Alright, now that I've put that down, do you notice something? This is along the major roadway, the E584. And so going off of that, you can start to get the idea that the Russians are pushing down major roadways, so that way they can ensure that they have a good logistical chain to their units. And so that really puts this whole thing into perspective. They're going for major cities, they're going for major population centers, and they're using major roadways as the best way to advance. And so if the Ukrainians can reinforce these larger roadways, you'll most likely be thwarting most Russian attacks as far as their strategies that are going at the moment. Although this beachhead is showing that they're having a little bit of variety in their battle plans, and also the landing of the VDV and the Spetsnaz, I believe, at the Hostomel airport shows that they are having a bit of variety in strategy, but their normal plays in the Russian book. They did the whole airport invasion of the capital thing in Afghanistan in 1979, and the naval invasion. I don't really believe the Russians are a strong suited naval invasion kind of country. They don't really have a lot of historical examples where they did that, but that is something that'd be very easy for them. All they had to do was send out soldiers from Rostov on Don straight down into this little gulf, and then they were right there at Mariupol. So it was a fairly easy naval invasion for them, and considering that they run into almost no resistance because the Ukrainian Navy is weak, that just goes to further confirm that this was a rather easy operation for them, and it was a very easy risk for them to take because there was almost no risk involved. There's been a story circling around. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but it's a good story if it is, that a Ukrainian cruise missile was launched and hit an air facility at Rostov-on-Don and has destroyed 2 Russian aircraft on the tarmac. If so, that's a great job. That's wonderful. And if not, that's fine because it's good for morale anyways. So going off of this, we can start to see that the Ukrainians are starting to maybe get on a back foot, and they're going to have to start tying up a lot of resources defending Kyiv and Kharkiv. And also defending the southern area as well, because this looks like it's going to become a major weak point of theirs here soon. Because if they lose this area down here, and they start pushing this really hard, what they're probably going to do is the Russians will focus most of their attack down this small roadway right here. Now I know that I've been saying that major roadways are the important thing that they're focusing on, but they're also trying to entice the Ukrainians to withdraw from their defensive positions that are heavily fortified around Donetsk and Luhansk. And so what they'll do is they're going to ride right along the back of their defenses, kind of like this, on this roadway right here, and I'll try and follow it as best as possible up to here. And what this will do, we'll make that a little bit thicker, and what this will do is that this will start pushing the Ukrainians out of their defensive positions on the rest of the Donetsk front in the south. And so then their new defensive line will have to be further north, and they're going to try and set it up along this major roadway right here. So we'll mark this one up in a different color of yellow, so that way it's kind of like the secondary defensive line. And, you know, I didn't really discuss what would happen at Melitopol, at all. But let's say that the front lines stay coordinated and they're pushing kind of like in unison. I'm gonna stop this little front right here. We'll just say that this would be the second defensive line. Save color. We're gonna make this a dark yellow, but it will be a different color yellow to a point. So that would be the new defensive line if the Russians do what I think they're going to do. And then over here near Melitopol, the thing with Melitopol is that there's really no major roadways that I can think of, rather than this one here and this one up here that does not go through Melitopol, that would be of any use to the Russians and something they would push. And the problem with these roads is that they all kind of connect to Melitopol in a way, except for this one, which kind of just goes straight to Vasilivka. And so that one could be exploited, but they haven't made it there, as far as I know, information-wise. So the Russians are going to run into a little bit of resistance on this front line because the fighting in Melitopol has been pretty fierce, according to what's been shown on the internet. So I'm not going to make any predictions of progress at Melitopol at the moment. before I move on, I'm going to answer some questions. Um, does the Ukrainian Air Force pose any threat to Russia? At the moment, yes, they do. They're actually destroying a decent amount of Russian aircraft and helicopters, but the Russians refuse to acknowledge that any Russian aircraft have been destroyed, although there is picture evidence of tail sections of transport aircraft that have been destroyed. So we know that they're telling mistruths about the amount of casualties they've been taking. So, are the Ukrainians faring any good since last night? They're faring pretty well considering that they're facing a country much more powerful than them. They're doing quite well. You got to remember that the red front lines are the current front lines on this map. And to compare them to yesterday, all I have to do is flip over to this map, and you can see that it's generally unchanged. You know, if we flip in between them and you forget all the proposed front lines and stuff like that, it's generally unchanged. So I think they're doing fairly well. They've inflicted heavy casualties according to them, and that's a very good thing. And hopefully they'll keep this up for another few days. It appears that Russia may be noticing that their offensive is starting to waver, and they're not really sure how well this will go, and it's looking like it may become an embarrassment. And so they're talking about um, the idea that the Ukrainians can have a conditional surrender, which is a bigger change of tone than last time. They just said they were going to denazify the country, and they really made. And Putin even seemed to suggest to one of his ministers that there would be no talking to the Ukrainians at all. They would just win this war, and that would be the end of it. But now that tone has changed, and now they're talking about maybe we'll talk to them. And so as the days go by, and if they don't take Kyiv or they don't take Kharkiv, I believe that that will start to turn into let's try and have a white peace where we just forget about this thing, or the Ukrainians will probably agree to a conditional agreement where they'll become a neutral country, but they will not demilitarize. It'll be something along those lines, is what I believe. Uh, is the Ghost of Kyiv still flying? No one really knows who the Ghost of Kyiv is, and so I'm not really sure if he's still flying or not. As far as I know, not a lot of Ukrainian aircraft have been shot out of the sky, so maybe he hasn't been, or maybe he has, but I can't really tell anything for sure. Uh, yo! Good, so Russia has got nothing overnight. I've seen them beg Ukraine to meet. Yes, Russia looks like it's in trouble. They do look like they're in trouble because, according to their first day objectives, they should have achieved everything in green by now, and they haven't. And it shows that they're starting to get stalled by the Ukrainians. So if they keep on getting stalled, even if they're making progress every day, if they keep on being stalled, it's going to start being a highly unpopular war for the Russians. It's already an unpopular war, but it'll become an even more unpopular war as the time goes by. So we're going to take a quick look at Reddit. I saw something on Reddit today on the Ukraine page that was just a true Reddit moment, but we'll try and forget that, and we'll just look at if there's any good information that's been loaded up to the website so far. Let's see here. Perth, Australia, good. I don't really care about what people are doing as a sign of support in other countries because it's not really helping them. You know, like coloring the side of a building blue isn't doing much for them. So yeah, you know, that's my stance on that. There's also this atrocity. Luckily, no one was injured in this film. So I'm just gonna say that so that way this doesn't get like smacked down by YouTube. But this is a Russian armored personnel carrier, and it ran over an old man inside of his car. Well, luckily he was not killed. But why did it go for him? I don't know. I mean, that wasn't a crash. That was a deliberate driving over of someone. He was aiming for that car. So that in itself is a war crime. They're targeting civilians, which is, you know, against the rules of war. There's someone asking, is it pronounced Kiev, Kyiv or Kiev? They changed it to Kyiv recently. I don't know why. I believe it's some sort of like de-Russianization of the country, de-Stalinization, something like that. But they changed the name from Kiev to Kyiv. Um, let's see what else we got. Uh, I don't know about that. I'm trying to report on the news, and this guy seems like he's crying out of a window. It might be true, or not. I don't really know. Having trouble. Transfer to IBAN versus Western. How can... Okay. Ukrainian women say Russian troops are flirting with them on Tinder. That's old news. Interesting. That's a thickness of materials chart and what is needed to shoot through it. um, Interesting. I don't know if that's true or not. It's probably not. Hopefully not. And we'll not click on that because it's blurred. So hopefully, that's not anything bad. Russian embassy attacked by protesters while trying to enter ambassador's residence in Ireland. Well, that's good. I'll try and check this out. I mean, this is the kind of support you can get behind in a way. That's good. All right. Let's see. Oh, and here's the Russian president. There's been nothing but conversation about the president of Ukraine. His name is Vladimir Zelenskyy, leaving Ukraine, but that's simply not true. He's actually put on a bulletproof vest and taken up arms somewhere in Ukraine, probably around Kyiv. But the true information as to where he is unknown because people are looking to kill him. What's this?
Побывали в Мариуполе, побывали в Широкино, побывали в Павлополь, побывали Гнутово.
Forget that. Russia gathers military extremely near Polish border. Putin preparing for more. That may be an escalation. They may be looking at trying to create a situation that'll invoke Article 5, and then they'll just get into an all-out war for the Baltics and parts of Poland. So, this is talking about how to incapacitate tanks. Talking about shoving pipes and stuff around the drive wheel, I believe. I believe that's the drive wheel on the T-60 series tank, which is what this looks like. It also looks like they're talking about where to throw Molotovs, which is a very good, helpful thing if you're fighting armored vehicles in an urban environment, because someone can be in a high-rise and throw Molotovs out the window at the Russians and generally get away unscathed for a few moments, but then, you know, the Russians will probably start lighting up the building and kill dozens of civilians, but that's the cost of fighting back sometimes. Let's see, on the first day of marriage, a Ukrainian couple gathered rifles to help defend their country. Oh, what more romantic than to fight and die for your country on the first day of being married? I mean, like, that's really honorable of them. It's a good thing they're doing that. Seek help in Poland. Russian gas cutoff vulnerability. This is showing the vulnerability of all these countries to having the gas cut off from the Russians. You can see that Germany is really up there on its dependence of Russian gas. And you can see that Hungary and the Czech Republic are incredibly high, but they are taking refugees at the moment. So while their resistance is somewhat passive, it does show that the general opinion is that what the Russians are doing is not well. Let's see, what else do we have? I'm probably about to pop back over to the map here in a second and start talking about hypotheticals and what's happened so far. Let's pull up. Let's pull this up. Let's pull up Russian invasion news, and let's see what the big news outlets are reporting on this. This was 12 minutes ago. This was updated 12 minutes ago. It was unclear whether Russia would engage in talks after latest comments attacking Ukraine's leadership. That was another thing. We'll talk about that. Dead guy in the snow, by the way. But we'll talk about that real quick. There's a lot of comments. I'll try and get to those in a second. But the Russian president said that the Ukrainian military should overthrow their drug-addicted something leaders and start negotiating with the Russians directly, and that sounds like it's starting to become something of a desperate psyops because what they're suggesting is just asinine and it's crazy. Like people would actually like the Ukrainians who are defending life and limb their country would overthrow their leadership and start trying to discuss with the Russians. It seems like a very poorly planned psyops campaign. So let's see what this article says. Oh yeah, also let's answer the comments first. It would be even tougher if the government was toppled because you'd see more civilians. There was a tank. Yes, that's true. Um, Here's someone trying VUM.today. Neat. They look like they were out of control running from something. Maybe. I mean, perhaps. I'm not really sure though, but the fact that out of everywhere he could have steered, he steered into a car that had a man in it. Um, I don't really know. I feel like that is not necessarily the case, but it may be the case. I won't rule it out. Right? Why did France and Germany disagree to close money transfer in Russia so that ruble would lose all of its value? Well, that's because Germany and France are scared of that happening to them. They're scared that if they cut Russia off from the SWIFT system, their currencies will also become devalued by a small amount, and so they're not wanting to do it for that reason. But this morning, the German diplomat said that they would be willing to do that. So we'll see if that happens within the next hours or so. With a population like this, Russia's in trouble. They will never give up. That's entirely true. Right now, they have about 13,000 militia members in Kyiv. So that's a very large addition to the already existent Ukrainian armed forces that are currently around the city. So we'll have to keep up with that situation as it goes on. And with that, I'm going to go back to reading this article here, and we're going to see what we can get from this. With Russian troops moving on Kyiv, the Kremlin sends mixed signals on talks. Let's see. A missile strike hammered Kyiv and rocket crashed in residential buildings. Zelenskyy urged Ukrainians to defend official signal and openness to talk, but Putin derided the Ukrainian government, and it was unclear what conditions the Kremlin would consider negotiations. Here's a map that they've made tracking the Russian invasion. Oh, wow, look at that. There's a paywall. The Russians are going to limit the access to Facebook because it's a platform of dissent. That's expected, really. There's some Ukrainians right here. They're on their phones. Here it looks like some Russian forces have lost some momentum. Burned out Russian vehicles. Good. I was scared that those were Ukrainian for a minute because that one had like that little plating, like the kind of bar plating that they put around NATO tanks sometimes, like the Challenger 2s. And so I was like, oh no. And then I remembered, oh yeah, the Russians do that as well. So that's not like a mutually exclusive NATO kind of thing. So that's good to know. Also, I know that Ukraine is not a NATO member. I'm just saying that that's a NATO thing because they've been getting help and supplies from NATO for the previous few years until now, and now NATO is doing nearly nothing. Reuters says that the Russian forces close in on Kyiv. We do know that at the moment. It looks like there's some new sanctions that came out, though. It looks like the EU is freezing the assets of Putin and Lavrov. Zelenskyy says he's the #1 target. He said that in a speech last night. You can actually find the link to that video on the Ukraine Reddit page. Link to that in the description of the stream. The mayor, who is the former heavyweight champion of the world, says there are saboteurs in the capital. They actually found a few dressed in Ukrainian uniforms and killed them earlier today. And then, what else do we have? What else? Doesn't really seem like this is saying anything of value that's new. Oh, this is, well, groups like Reuters are the reason that Ukraine will be on the back foot in some places because they're going to show a picture of Ukrainians on a bridge, and the Russians can look at that picture and figure out where that bridge is in the city. These are the kind of people who get folks killed. Let's see. The ruble has lost all its value, the lowest in history, according to CNBC. Yeah, I think it did. I believe that's true. I still can't believe nobody's sneaking into Moscow to exact revenge. I think a lot of people are at the moment. It's just that there's so many of them, they form a protest. Um, I would laugh so hard if someone snuck into Moscow with an RPG and lit the Kremlin up. I would too. In time, Justin, they'll forget. They will foe inside Russia as the fight goes on, but might not get to that. That's true as well. So let's see what else could we talk about? We could talk about a whole bunch of hypotheticals, but I don't really want the stream to be nothing but hypotheticals because then it's not really giving current info. So let's go to Reddit, let's refresh it and see if they have anything new. Refresh. Let's see here. What do we have? Do we have anything new? Oh, that's a good one to know. Uh, and here's Zelenskyy. Can't hear any audio from that. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. No, I should be able to hear audio from that, but apparently it's got no audio, so. There's Snake Island, the 13 men on their little stand. And let's see, the German arms manufacturer KMW, which stands for Krauss-Maffei Wegmann, is offering 50 Gepard AA tanks at the moment. This was posted at 12:56, I believe, in German time. I don't know what time zone they're in, but they said they could be delivered in relatively short time. And it looks like it's pending approval from the German government. So the arms dealers are seeing a good way to get a little bit of money out of this, maybe even help Ukraine defend itself. The U.S. is sending more anti-aircraft weapons, so that's very good. So there's a little bit of material efforts being made by Western countries to help out, but not a lot. And you're not going to see a lot of military support because they're scared of a whole bunch of implications. And if you want to know about that, just watch one of my last streams. Those covered that a lot. So let me go answer some more questions. Laying on the bridge kind of sounds like a bad strategy in general. Yes, but it's a really bad strategy when you outline that exactly to the Russians in a picture. Because then an already bad position is being put at a very disadvantageous position. I just think Ukraine needs to be ultra conservative. I can kind of agree with that. And what would happen if Belarus joined the war? Are they allowed to do that as a Russian ally? I believe they're already in the war. They've kind of sided with the Russians already because they're allowing the Russians to base forces out of their country. So that's kind of like it's kind of like they're not taking direct military action, but they are taking indirect military action, and in that regard, they are already involved in this war. It's kind of like how Saudi Arabia allowed America to invade Iraq from its territory. It was much like that. Let's see, what else? What were the other questions? Other countries wouldn't get involved. That's right. Do you think the Stingers are what is taking down planes and helicopters? I'm not sure. It could be Dishkas. It could be anything. I mean, like the Ka-52 that was taken down in the first day of the war that landed in a field near Kyiv, it looked a lot like it had just been peppered by machine gun fire, and that caused enough damage for it to crash land. So I don't really know. But one thing's for certain, that Stingers are a pretty good, um, how would I say this? They're a good upgrade from the current kind of like standing of the Ukrainians. And even if they have mostly Stingers, it's still great to get more of them. You know, you can't have enough of anything in a war, especially equipment and supplies to fight with. That's something that you always have to make sure is flowing is munitions. So let's see what else we got. We've got, but they didn't declare war or send their troops. If they did, it would be bad. Uh, yeah, I mean, like, they didn't declare, well, yeah, I mean, like, they didn't declare war as far as I know. I'm not really sure if about that. I'll have to check that in a while, but at the moment they haven't. But the thing is that they're allowing Russian troops to push across the border into Ukraine. And when the Ukrainians were firing at the Russians across the border, just for a very short while, I believe the border guards were, that would have been an active war against Belarus. So they're kind of involved, but they're just laying back. And I believe that there is talks that there could be a proposed Belarusian front somewhere over here in this wide open area. Although I don't think that'd be reasonable because there's nothing over here to take. But they're saying that it could look... Come on, draw the line. It could look something like this. If the Belarusians got involved, they would start pushing ground like so. So let me mark that. We'll mark this like that color. Well, that color, so that way we can see it. And that would be the kind of like proposed Belarusian push. And if the British are to be believed correct, which is that the Russians are planning on taking the entire country at this point, the plans that I have here that I believe are accurate and true, they would not be true anymore, and they would start spreading out across the country. But so far, nothing seems to show that they're trying to take the whole country, because if they were, they would be pushing weak spots in every direction, but instead they're going for these straight line routes to the major cities. You know, and that's what they're doing. And so it doesn't make any sense to say they're going to take the whole country, because if they wanted to, they would be pushing an offensive across this open area right here where there's almost no fighting going on and the positions have been static for the first few days of the war. I mean, like, there's been some movement, but there's no movement. And if they wanted to really push it, they would just start pushing that a lot harder. And then that would become a whole new area that the Ukrainians would have to defend, as they'd have to defend the entire northwest area of the border. And that would cause a lot of issues. That would spread the resources thin, yet they're not. So I don't believe that that's the Russians' goal, to take the whole country yet. Also, that's the first day's like events unfolded, and this is what the second day looks like, are the red lines. Also, to everyone watching, if you're watching, thank you so much. And if you like what you're watching, make sure to subscribe and also join my Discord, because it appears that YouTube is removing my subscribers after they subscribed. I had 97 subscribers after last night's stream, and they deleted everyone who subscribed during the stream, and have and now I'm back down to 78. So make sure to join the Discord as well, so that way you can be updated on streams and resubscribe if you need to. So let's answer these questions. Stingers are OP against tanks. I thought Stingers were anti-air. I thought those were for attacking helicopters and stuff. Let me check real quick. It's a man-portable air defense system. So yes, this isn't really good against tanks. I think what you're talking about is a Javelin. This is more for attacking helicopters and stuff, which the Ukrainians need, because a lot of their air defenses, the larger ones, have already been knocked out by the Russians in the first day of the attack. So they would need these, very much so. Like the video, fellas. Let's get this feed out to the masses. Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be really nice. I'm gonna like my own video. It is known what for Pakistani president met Putin. Is it known what for Pakistani president met Putin? He met him for some kind of trade talk. And what Pakistan has said, their official position is they don't want to be enemies with anyone. They just kind of want to be friends in a way, you know, ish. You know, they kind of just want to be able to trade with everyone, and they're trying to keep neutral in the world's affairs. But that's in poor taste, considering that Switzerland has taken an official stance on this and has imposed sanctions, and they are the historical neutral body of the world. So if they're taking a stance against this, generally everyone should be taking a stance against it. What is the other questions? Nobody said the Russians was smart. That's true. No one said the Russians are smart. It appears that their strategies are kind of based in backwards ways, and it looks like they aren't going to work well. I mean, like, they might work in the end, but they're not working like modern strategies would. Like, you would have seen the United States. I don't know if we should talk about that. I'll talk about that because we have nothing else to say, but because nothing has developed so far. But if we were to talk about what the United States would have done, they would have lined up most of their units across this area here. And instead of trying to push straight across the border, they would have had all of their units just sweep like this around, and then they would have had a group detach from that, and they would have attacked Kyiv. Because that's what they did in Iraq. And if we were going off of what they did in Iraq, which is not always the strategy, it's not like they do the same, it's not like countries do the same war strategies each time. Like we can see right now that Russia's blending a lot of their old strategies into this current war. But that's what the Americans would have done, and I think it would have gone much better than whatever this is. Let's see, we got anything else? I have a YouTube channel, and that happens all the time. Yeah, it's very annoying. I don't like that at all, because it's just annoying. It's like, I sat here, I delivered A+ content last night, I got subscribers for it, and then they just sit there and, just say, whatever, see you around, man. You're not getting these subscribers, they're going to be deleted. And I didn't like that at all, so... on that note, I'm probably going to stay around till another 10 minutes because it's very hot in this room right now and there's nothing developing at the moment. I'll probably hop back on this later on in the day and give another update in about 9 hours or so. So I'm going to cover just a little bit more stuff. We'll look at Reddit. We'll try and read some news sources if we can, and we'll see what's going on with that. So let's hop over here, refresh this page, and see if we got anything new. So Israel stands with Ukraine. That's cool. That's nice. Someone's written a letter to the Russian embassy in their country. I mean, like, that's nice, but I don't really think that's going to do anything. What's Putin's endgame? We've covered this a lot in this channel. Does anyone know? Let's look at the best case scenario. He takes Kyiv and Ukraine surrenders. He has a destabilized country. He's ruined his entire reputation. He has bankrupted himself and his people, and nobody will ever want to make any sort of diplomatic trade with him ever again. This is the best case. Another case is he fights a war of attrition against Ukrainian insurgency for years and goes bankrupt and eventually gives up, plus the above. Like, what the hell is his endgame? His endgame, from what I'm thinking, is that he's going to want to. Well, this is at least what he said he's wanted, but he keeps on changing that. So we're just going to try and assume Ukraine would be divided up into two countries. There would be this country over here made up of mostly Russian-speaking people. Well, there's really just two territories that Russia is concerned into dividing Ukraine into. So we'll put this one here. Ukraine would be generally divided almost in two, but it would not be along the Dnieper River. Russian-speaking people are to the left of this line that I've just made. We'll mark this with this color, so it's different. Russian-speaking people are to the west of this line, so they're to the right. And that's where most of the Russian folks are. And so what Russia may do is that they may pull a Germany and they'll say, come, Russian-speaking people, join us again. And they'll make this a part of the Russian Federation, all of it, just through here. The other side of Ukraine here would become a puppet nation of Ukraine. They would have it completely demilitarized. It would be stripped of most of its military capacity. It would just have something like a paramilitary police force. They would probably have Zelenskyy executed or put in prison. They would install a new puppet government, and the puppet government would be entirely reliant on Russia for instructions. If Putin got tired of one of the leaders, he would just have him executed. He's done that already in Donetsk and Luhansk, the leaders of those republics. But that was years ago. That wasn't like an ongoing thing that just happened in this war. That was something that happened years ago. And so that's what would probably happen. And so you would have two new countries come out of Ukraine, or it become part of Russia, this side to the right of it. And the Ukrainians would be some sort of puppet, and the Russian influence, sphere of influence, would be pushed all the way up to Poland. And so now you don't even have a neutral country like Ukraine dividing the Russians from NATO. Russia and NATO would pretty much be right on each other, like it was another Cold War again. But then again, Belarus is kind of like that already. But, Ukraine would add to that border that they share with NATO. So that's kind of like the end goal that I'm seeing here, if everything went according to their plan. Through Puppet State. Yeah. See you later, guys. Go Ukraine. Thanks for the content. No problem at all, Donald. It's been a pleasure having you here. Hopefully the content was good, and if you like it, make sure to subscribe and tell your friends to subscribe too, because You know, if you like the content, that will help this channel grow and it'll help get the information out there that I'm saying. So, in the last few minutes, I believe I might cut this even a little bit earlier than 10 minutes because it is insufferable in this room right now, y'all. Y'all don't know. I'm sweating terribly right now because it's just that hot in here. But we'll look at the situation in Kyiv. We'll try and get some information about it. Battle of Kyiv. See about this. 6 minutes ago from CNN. The U.S. has warned Russia is seeking to encircle the city. Exactly what I said. Look at this map. That was that was what I said would happen. And now the U.S. is saying this is probably what's going to happen. You know, it's almost like it doesn't take a genius and the Joint Chiefs of Staff to see what the Russians are doing. It just takes a bit of common sense and reasoning. And that's why when people say that I'm an armchair historian nerd, because I've had 2 people say that so far, it's like go kiss my ass or suck my dick or something, because you can't call me an armchair general because you say that when someone's wrong, and I'm getting most everything right about this war at the moment right. And so yeah, I mean, like, if this happens down here, if all of these proposed defensive lines start to change down in the south of Ukraine, I'm going to call up the Ministry of Defense in Ukraine and ask them if I can come over there, because apparently I know exactly what the Russians are doing, if that's going to be right. But I'm not going to sit here and like brag about myself or anything. I'm just saying that so far I've been right. So yeah. Anyways, Russia's assault on Ukraine began okay, yeah. 18,000 guns with ammunition has been distributed to the reservists in the Kyiv region, and all men from 18 to 60 are banned from leaving. Russia moves to partially restrict Facebook's access over allegations of censorship. Kremlin adds more details on proposal to send delegation to Minsk to meet with Ukraine. Considering that they're the ones reaching out for like some sort of agreements and talks, says that they're the ones in a bad position. Because when the United States nuked Japan, we didn't reach out and ask them if they wanted to surrender yet. They came to us and said they would like to surrender. So, you know, that's starting to suggest that the Russians are on the back foot, because they're the ones reaching out trying to have talks with the Ukrainians. Let's see, that the Wikipedia page has got nothing on it. Battle looms. Well, I want to know about the actual battle ongoing right now. And we don't have any information about that. We'll have to see about it. I mean, they might not start reporting a lot of information on it at all. Okay, all right. I see this right here. Buttermonger 2000 says, by the way, it's pronounced Kiev. No, it's not. They changed the name of Kiev to Kyiv, spelled K-Y-I-V. It's not pronounced Kyiv anymore. In Russian right here, if you read this Russian straight for what it, well, Ukrainian actually, for what it says, because the Russian and Ukrainian alphabets are really similar, this backwards N makes an E sound. It kind of makes like an IE sound-ish. So you say Kyiv. You don't say Kiev. You say Kyiv. That's the name. If you wanna back that up, type in, is it pronounced Kyiv or Kiev, and they'll probably say Kyiv. Let's check it. Is it pronounced Kyiv or Kiev? Let's see. Alright, so Kiev is the Russian way of saying it, and I'm assuming that the short Ukrainians call their capital Kyiv, the spelling, and the Russian version is Kiev. See, so it's Kyiv, Kiev. It's Russian, Ukrainian, Kyiv. And when you say Kyiv, it doesn't even sound like you're saying the Y, so I just say Kyiv because that just makes sense. So, sorry. My boy knows what he's talking about. For the most part, yeah, I don't know everything, but I know most things. And so, on that note, we're going to wrap this up again by looking at the fronts as of the moment. I'm going to give a little recap, and this will end the stream. So, currently at the moment, the Russians have made ground overnight. They've retaken the bridge into Kherson. They may have taken the town of Kherson. They have pushed into the city of Melitopol. Here in the south, near the Crimean Peninsula, there's currently heavy fighting ongoing in that city. It's been said that there was a naval invasion near Mariupol that consists of several thousand soldiers. It is unknown where exactly they landed and where they are pushing out to, but this blue line right here is my proposed suggestion of the area they would stretch out to. They're going to try and push the Ukrainians off their defensive line into this new defensive line, and these two front lines will meet up onto the coast, and with that, they have much more freedom to clear out the minefields down here on the southern border. They'll send more forces through that opening into here to push this front line toward Zaporizhzhia, which is a very hard thing to pronounce, and I probably said that wrong. And then they're going to try and push up this road here, because it's going to take more Ukrainians off of these heavily defended positions, and the new defensive line will look like something like this up here. And the Russians are just going to keep on pushing from the southern area north along this defensive line until the Ukrainians have been completely removed off of the heavily defended positions, and then they're stuck in these open fields in between towns and on major roadways where they have no built-in, well-fortified defensive positions, and then the Russians can just start pushing them back real easy. That's what is going on down here, and that's what all these colors are about. This is the proposed front line going to Dnipro. This red, kind of like salmon pink line right here is a foiled battle plan that was found on a dead commander today, saying that his brigade was supposed to take the main road called E584 from Poltava to Kremenchuk to capture the hydroelectric power plant and the town. So we know that information, but nothing really has come out of that. There's still heavy fighting going on at Kharkiv. I do believe that their intention is to still try and surround the city and starve it out. There's still heavy fighting going on in the town of Sumy. The Ukrainians have not given up and have held strong in Chernihiv. They are still fighting up there, which has foiled the Russians' plans to push down to the western side of Kyiv. And the Russians have made large ground from Pripyat and Chernobyl yesterday, and they are currently fighting heavily in Ivankiv, and they've now reached the suburbs of Kyiv, and there is currently fighting ongoing there, but the actual situation and the status of these fights is currently unknown, and more information will probably be on the way in the days soon after. And so that's the current situation. I'm going to leave you all with that. I'll probably be back on in about 9 hours. And so I thank y'all all so much, and I will see y'all around.